Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So we're going to do an overview of all the great stuff that took place at the summit 2 weeks ago now, which is hard to believe it was that long ago already. Um, Kelly and I will kind of take us through a little bit of all the different things that took place. We'll talk a little bit in some detail about a couple of the things, but overall, just to trying to give everybody a flavor of what took place at the summit and maybe some of the things that are upcoming and where we'll be having follow-up discussions. So we started off, and as with any in-person meeting, it really is about how do we build relationships, how do we spend time together, as opposed to worrying about all of the digital things going on in the world. And love this quote from Dr. James Comer about significant learning occurring with significant relationships. And at Summit, lots of new relationships were made, lots of existing relationships were strengthened, and as always, people really just wanted to talk to each other, learn from each other, share their experiences, and have a bit of a good time, which was definitely accomplished throughout the week. So my name is Matt Seaman. I'm here with some of the other staff of the consortium. We have Kelly Murray, Christina Rosen, and Jennifer Morcat on. Sarah Feldman and Jill DeGraff are on vacation this week, so they aren't joining us today. But the consortium is a not-for-profit alliance of about 70 member companies. This is a list of the benefactor and sponsor level members. And all of the things that we do really are based on the work being done by these companies, the commitment of these companies. Almost all of them were represented at the summit, along with a lot of people that were not members, which was fantastic. But thank you to all of our members and everybody in our community for making the consortium a success. And all of the things we do are based on the operational experiences and the things that all of these different people bring to this community. It was a very fun time. This is some photos from the opening welcome reception. We had great meals. The food was fantastic. The roof deck was a beautiful location. The weather was amazing. If you're from one of the northern climates, it was very nice to be in Atlanta where it was 70 or 80 degrees every day and sunny, and just absolutely beautiful to get spend some time outdoors. But it was really a fun way to kick off the event and have people get to know each other and start that process of building new relationships and catching up with some old friends. Let's talk a little bit about some of the numbers of Summit. We had 120 attendees, which was absolutely fantastic, from 58 different companies. And when you think about the breadth of experiences, the breadth of skills, all of the things that we got to share, when you think about 120 people coming together from 58 different companies, it really was a phenomenal sharing session and learning session with people at all different stages of their journeys with intelligent swarming, automation, implementing AI, KCS. So companies that maybe are new to a KCS journey had a lot to offer when it came to thinking about organizational design, and people that are super mature with KCS were sharing how they're using that to really drive AI implementation. So phenomenal having all these people together. One of the things that was really interesting, we had 71 first-time attendees to the summit, which normally we have about a third of the people attending the summit are very heavily engaged with the consortium, show up several times a year to different events and participate in a lot of the different activities that we do. About a third are people that maybe come to a summit and then they don't come a year and then they come back, or they come to one or two events a year. And a third are people that have never attended a summit or don't show up very often. And this time, 71%, more than 50% of the people there were first-time attendees, which brought a whole new energy to the summit. And it was phenomenal to get to meet all these people in person for the first time. And we got great feedback from everybody. And keeping the summit at this 100 to 100 maybe 30 people really seems to be a great way for everybody to be able to connect and share ideas, but not get overwhelming where you start to lose that touch and that personalization, which is really what we want this event to be about. Over the course of the 3 days, we had several hosted sessions. So 18 different people from 12 companies hosted breakout sessions, and we'll talk about those sessions in a little bit of detail. Some of the themes that came out of that is that reality is in the interaction. That was kind of the theme of the summit. A lot of discussion on people and culture, which was a fairly large shift from last year. Last year, a lot of the discussions were centered on what is this AI thing going to do? How are we going to implement it? What impact is it going to have on our teams? And we still have a lot of AI discussions going on, but it's moved from what is this going to do to the actual use cases, approaches, and measures that people are using for leveraging these new technologies in automation. And the fact that we now need to spend and continue to spend a lot of time on our people and culture was a bit of a shift in the focus of themes from last year to this year. And KCS sessions on the why, the how, being a little bit more advanced in KCS. So lots to talk about KCS. And I forget who said it, but somebody said knowledge is cool again. So with AI, knowledge is back as a central figure in companies as they recognize we need to have structured content that we know where it's coming from, we know it's updated, we know it's accurate in order to power all these automations. So lots of sessions that kind of covered all of these topics. Open Space Day, always a fan favorite. We had 32 different topics explored during Open Space. Some of the themes that were pulled out of the different sessions, so intent and personalization was a big one. The idea of people and AI and in partnership between people and AI and how those things are coming together. Governance and structure matter, and measuring success tomorrow. So as we're seeing these shifts, measures are always a big topic, but what does measurement success look like in the future compared to where we are today? So some themes that came out of Open Space, and we'll review that in a little bit more detail. And most importantly, countless connections. Like I said earlier, people really just want to talk to each other and have interesting discussions about the things that are on the top of their mind. During the breakfasts, the lunches, the receptions, during breaks, as always, people are interested in talking to each other. So lots of new connections were made to the consortium, as well as amongst our members and our community. So it was, as always, just a great time and a lot of fun. So it was a pretty jam-packed 2.5, 3 days of time. And so this is a view of the agenda and the things that we covered over the different days. So on the first day, we started off with talking a little bit about this reality is in the interaction. So what are we seeing with the convergence of knowledge, people, and AI? What does that look like? What are we feeling when that comes together? We'll talk a little bit more about that. Then moving into some real use cases with Kendall and Albert from F5 and Red Hat. And Kelly doing some really fun exercises and getting people talking about nurturing an adaptive workforce. So, thinking about how these things are all coming together, hearing about some real use cases, and then how is this impacting our culture and how do we think about our adaptive workforce was the morning of day one. Then we went out into breakout sessions and loosely had 2 tracks that took place, but people moved back and forth between rooms, which was fantastic. In the one room, which we absolutely named the room with no windows, and then the other room was the room with windows. We were very creative in how we named the 2 spaces. In one was more of a KCS track. So we had why KCS is more important than ever, an executive interview with David Kay and Jennifer Crippen from DBK and Associates. Then a thoughtful approach to a KCS implementation from Heather at Twilio. And finally, leveraging knowledge domain analysis to spark organizational buy-in by Mark Churchill at Rockwell Automation. So a bit of a KCS track that matured from the why to the how to the what you can do with all this great stuff once you have a mature KCS implementation. In the other breakout room, the one with windows, Chris from Ping and Royce from Autodesk took us through what they're seeing as success with intelligent swarming. So less on how they got to intelligent swarming and the process of implementing intelligent swarming, but more what they're seeing and how they're looking at reputation models, how they are seeing the successes. So more of an outcome of what they're seeing from intelligent swarming, which was really interesting to see. Then Corey from Cisco took us through a thoughtful approach to monitoring an AI implementation. And we ended the second breakout session with Carly and Sherry from SAP on leaping before they looked and what happens when you start with a use case that no one wants, which was a fun title to talk about how they had to move from kind of the chaos of we just need AI to a structured approach to implementing AI and some of the results they're seeing from that. So a jam-packed day with lots of great topics, which led to interesting things in the second day with open space. And open space is always a fun time. And the energy and excitement of people talking to each other all day is infectious. And then on the day three, we talked about the AI blueprint and a new piece of content available to our members. Then an executive interview with Joe from Techion, Laurel from F5, and Joe from ConnectWise, getting a bit of a sense on how they think about long-term goals, strategy, and planning in this chaotic world of AI and everything on fire every day. Like, how do you keep the focus on the future? Ryan Matthews from NetApp did a very interesting discussion on putting some pie into your AI benefits calculation and refreshing a little bit on their shift left model and the maturity of their shift left model, and then how they think about AI in this world and doing a bit of a benefits. So super compelling talk by Ryan. And then we ended day three with Sarah taking us through building the future together, thinking about how this consortium work gets done, the resources that are available, and what we can continue to work on together. I don't know, Kelly, if you have any other thoughts or comments on the agenda and all the things that took place before we dive into some of the details.
Mostly I'm thinking about the details. We really had again, you have already said this, a jam-packed couple of days. And we laugh every time about what a great group of people we have that shows up to go through that jam-packed couple of days. So
yeah, I can't say enough about the way people showed up and having so many new people. It was interesting how you never would have thought that there was a whole bunch of new people in the room. Everybody instantaneously melded together, instantaneously started talking to each other, instantaneously felt like they were a part of a community, which was phenomenal to see. All right, so to talk a little bit about reality is in the interaction, which was the theme of the event. Oh, sorry. First, wanted to thank our dinner sponsors for helping host the dinner. The consortium, as you all know, is a nonprofit industry association, and having some of our verified and aligned vendors help support the dinner is fantastic and a great way for us to continue to be able to build this environment and this experience for people that show up at the summit. So thank you to Cabello, eGain, and Search Unify for helping sponsor the dinner on Tuesday night. So if we think about the theme, right, that reality is based on the interaction as people, the way we experience the world, the way that we interact with each other, the way we interact with technology, the way we interact with everything is what forms the reality and how we see reality. And over the course of time, this reality has continued to shift and change from when we were first starting with call centers and started to have people that would pick up the phone to the advent of CRM tools and CRM capabilities that allowed us to start doing interesting things with discussions with our customers, to the internet coming along, which transformed how we interact with self-service, how we think about communicating, just the web communication technologies allowing us to have chats and all of those things. So over the course of time, our reality on how we interact with our customers, how we interact with each other has shifted dramatically, always based on a technology change. So as the technology has advanced and the technology has changed, how we interact with each other has changed, which has shifted our reality in thinking about what it is that our roles are, what are the things we're trying to accomplish, how do we measure these accomplishments. So this interaction layer has always been shifting on us and continues to shift on us. And it does feel a little bit different right now with the AI capabilities and the automation capabilities that are being put in front of us and the pace with which they're being put in front of us. As I mentioned, from last year's member summit to this year's annual summit, the shift in the discussions that were taking place around automation have been very dramatic. And many people talked about it as we were kind of reviewing the 3 days, mainly because our dreams are finally coming true. When you go back into the consortium archives, and people have been around the consortium forever, the discussions on wouldn't it be great if we could automatically find a way to take all of the case notes and all the things that are happening in our CRM tool and create summaries? Wouldn't it be great if we could merge multiple sets of data to create dynamic on the fly answers for people based on inputs? And so these are things we've been talking about for a long time, and all of these things are finally coming true. And generative AI has absolutely changed the discussion. And today, when somebody says AI, 99% of the time they're talking about generative AI. I would ask people not to forget about all the other great capabilities that are out there, whether it's being predictive or doing clustering or all the other algorithms that exist. But generative AI definitely has shifted the discussion because it feels like a tool that has 100% been built for knowledge-driven organizations and support services, IT service management. These organizations are all knowledge-driven organizations. So it does feel different today as we have kind of shifted into this new technology. But the hype is definitely dying down. We're seeing more and more use cases come into production. People are using it. Vendors are just building it into their solutions. So when you're using the tools that you already own, you're using Gen AI in the background. You don't even really recognize that it's an AI anymore, right? It's just a user interface. But these things are definitely changing our interaction layer and are changing our reality of how we think about what we're going to accomplish and how we're going to accomplish it in the near future. At our leadership committee in December, Mohammed, who is the global head of support for SAP, when we were talking about AI and all these things, he said that we don't actually need an AI strategy. We need to have a solid business strategy and then figure out how to use AI to help us reach our business strategy. So it's less about what is our AI strategy and less about we just need to be using AI to what is my business strategy? What am I trying to accomplish? And then how do I leverage AI to reach that strategy? And I would argue that our business goal really hasn't changed. And what we're trying to do is maximize the realized value that our customers see in our products and services. And it doesn't matter what organization you're in. If you're in a technical support organization, you obviously are trying to solve problems as fast as you can, trying to get answers into the hands of your customers, trying to make them successful with your products and services. If you're in IT service management, you are trying to make your customers, who are the employees of the company, successful using the tools and the infrastructure of your company to get their jobs done. If you're in sales, you want to sell products to your customers that are going to make them productive and are going to make them see more value in what they're trying to deliver to their customers. So everybody in the company is really trying to achieve this. And I would argue this business goal hasn't really changed. How we deliver it is shifting and changing pretty dramatically, though. And when we think about what the consortium members and the consortium community has been working on for over 30 years now, and this idea of reimagining the way we work together, we have been thinking about innovative ways to deliver value to people. And how we do that changes over time. How we do that is emergent based on technology. But our models, our methodologies really are all about how do we deliver value to people. And so we've shifted a little bit away from just talking about the AI hype, right, to the intentional use of AI capabilities and strategic automation based on AI capabilities. Because what we really want is outcome-driven automation. And whatever new technologies come along, we want to figure out how do we automate things, how do we make it easier for people to do their jobs based on an outcome. So what is the outcome we're trying to achieve? So the intentional use of these capabilities to deliver value to people. Greater discipline around knowledge management. We have talked quite a bit over the last year about the reemergence of companies doubling down on methodologies like KCS because they recognize that without that, they can't use AI. Early on, all the discussions were AI is going to transform KCS. AI is going to change how KCS is done, and that is true. But you need KCS in order to power your AI system. Now, if you're capturing and structuring using AI instead of people, great. You still have to capture and structure your knowledge. So when we think about discipline around knowledge management and thinking about it as a strategic approach to managing our corporate memory, our intellectual capacity, the explosion in information and data that we have, what are all those knowledge management techniques that we can leverage? KCS obviously is a central figure in that role, but it's not the only figure in that role. And then being very purposeful about how we engage with people and building those meaningful relationships to achieve our shared goals. So what is it we're actually trying to achieve? And as we continue to move more and more stuff to automation, as we remove the burden of answering the same problems over and over from our people, and we remove the burden of administrative tasks from our people, what is it we're trying to achieve, and how do we build the connections and the relationships to do that? The relationships we have with our customers is going to be the differentiator in the future, not the technology that we're using. It's going to be the relationships we have with our people. So we think about this in a system. Our new complex issues, solving them require collaboration, problem solving, all of the human skills. So as we have new complex issues coming in that we have to answer, KCS is the methodology that helps us figure out how do we solve things faster. As we're solving them, how are we capturing the knowledge? How are we structuring it? KCS is what helps us build this really structured knowledge database that contains all this data and content that we can leverage. So as we're solving problems, KCS is the way we do our work, and that helps us create this really structured knowledge, data, content repository for us to leverage. That really is the fuel that powers our automation. So as we see all these advancing AI technologies, we need that structured data and content in order to power our automation capabilities. Now, a lot of these automation capabilities can be leveraged to help us solve complex issues faster, do diagnostics, and all of these things can help us do the tasks of KCS, and absolutely can help us mine the database and do things with our data and our content. So these automation capabilities can help us do everything on the bottom as well. But the real interesting stuff starts to happen when we use these automation capabilities to shift around how we're interacting. And how do we use these automation capabilities to become more preemptive, drive self-service, and do things within assisted support? When we think about intelligent swarming and connecting people to people and people to work in an assisted model, AI can absolutely help us do all those things much more efficiently. So how do we leverage these AI capabilities and all these automations to really change that interaction layer? But that interaction layer is also what helps us drive the use cases. So when we think about how are we going to be more preemptive, what are we going to do with assisted, that should drive the use cases for our automation capabilities. And as we're doing all that stuff in the interaction layer, that's what feeds back into solving new complex issues, driving data back into our structured knowledge database. So this is a system that we need to think about. And the AI blueprint is really designed to help us think through this model and think through what are we trying to achieve? As we're trying to achieve it, how do we leverage these automation capabilities thoughtfully? And how do we continuously improve the entire model? So as we think about that interaction layer, that really is where our reality starts to exist. So as we think about our AI capabilities, our people, and our knowledge, support knowledge, usage data, community data, right? When we're talking about knowledge now, we're talking about much bigger than just KCS created knowledge. But as these things come together, that's really where the reality is. And so this was the theme of the summit, was the coming together of our AI capabilities, our people, and our knowledge. And the reality is the interaction of these three things coming together. There's a lot more slides that go behind all of that, and a lot more thinking that goes behind all of that. And we're thinking of either doing a recording of that presentation or doing an encore presentation where we go through the entire talk track and all the thoughts there. So stay tuned for what we might do to round out that discussion. When we think about those things and the consortium models learnings, KCS enhances our AI outcomes, develops that high quality, up-to-date, structured data. It's transparent, secure. We know where the information comes from. Understanding the data that you're using for AI is super important, and making sure that you have it secure and everybody knows about it is one of the foundations to making sure that the AI is doing things that we understand. Intelligent swarming, as we start to shift more and more things to automation, thinking about how we build an adaptive organization, and intelligent swarming helps us build that adaptive organization by unlocking this unbound network that utilizes all the human skills that we need. And it really adapts to any type of environment. It is a sense and respond type of model. So an organization that is built around this can adapt to anything that comes down the road. The predictive customer engagement model is a model for strategic automation. The AI blueprint fits into the predictive customer engagement model. And this is all about how are we thoughtful about approaching and monitoring our entire system when we're doing things with automation. Customer engagement initiative. So the interactions across the entire enterprise. So as all these things are shifting, what are all the channels of interaction we have? How do we improve the customer experience across all these different touch points? And how do we meet the customer where they want to be and where they are? So the customer engagement initiative is getting refreshed right now. So there's a lot of energy around the customer engagement initiative as people understand that this interaction layer is shifting and changing. And around all of this is leadership and adaptive organization. So how we hire, organize, and develop our people is changing as the world around us is changing. But all of these models come together. And over the last 30 years of these different things being developed, takes all these things into account. So it really all fits together in the new automation and AI world that we're going to. So it's pretty amazing that things that the community has been talking about for 30 years, like I said, is finally all coming true. And we're finally reaching all of our dreams and how we can implement these things and power these things with automation technologies. So after we kind of reviewed the interaction and thinking about the three components coming together, we heard from Kendall and Albert on what they're doing with AI in production today. So what was interesting, there was a lot of overlap between the types of use cases that they're implementing. And from their presentation, kind of three things emerged that, AI can really improve the speed and efficiency of the solve loop, and thinking about how we're capturing, structuring in the workflow. A lot of that stuff can now be automated. So they presented on what they're doing to help automate a lot of the solve loop activities. AI can supercharge your discovery. So you can get very relevant, very fast answers for employees and customers, leveraging AI capabilities. And this idea that is continually emerging. So experimentation helps you uncover new values. It helps you uncover new things, new use cases. So we talk about use cases are kind of a top-down and a bottom-up approach, where you need to develop AI use cases based on what your business is trying to achieve. But the technology is emerging so quick that allowing for experimentation and people to uncover new things it can do is a great way to drive use cases up. So you need to kind of balance those two things. But both Kendall and Albert are very much intrigued by experimentation and trying things and testing things. And a lot of times those lead to use cases that get put into production. So those were kind of the three big themes that came out of their talk. But lots of use cases. The AI Blueprint has captured and documented a lot of the use cases that our members are talking about as well. And then we talked about sleeping hedgehogs. So Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit about sleepy hedgehogs?
I do. I love a sleepy hedgehog. So that sort of the theme of Summit, those three things coming together, right? The AI capabilities, the people, and the knowledge is really a way to put into context sort of what is happening with this AI, the excitement around the AI capabilities piece. And we're learning a lot about the AI capabilities, and we already know a lot about how to manage our knowledge. We've been working on that for a long time. And so one of the things that is available to us is more information about people and that people piece of that interaction. And so we talked about the nurturing and adaptive workforce resource just a little bit. We talked about the skills that we have available to us to get better at working with people. And some of those are our coaching skills, including listening and inquiry and reflection and appreciation and advocacy. And some of those are our actual emotions and managing our own selves, which is the model that we talked about, the sleepy hedgehog, which says basically, when you experience an emotion, if you can sort of give yourself a little perspective and consider it as it is a sleepy hedgehog in the chair you want to sit in, the way that you might deal with that emotion is to just notice it and see what it needs and help it out, as opposed to picking it up and flinging it at your partner or at your colleague. So we sort of talked a little bit about the hedgehog of presence. It allows you to be present when you can manage yourself in such a way. And after we talked about these kinds of skills that are available to us, we sat at our tables and we talked about what's something that's going well at work. So the themes that came out of that were things that are going well at work for the 120 people in the room included executive alignment, which was very exciting to hear, collaboration across the organization, building, empowering and engaging cultures. These were all really fun things to hear that people were discovering were in common at their tables. And we did sort of a quick readout around the room after those conversations. And one of the tables reported that the path to success is through our people, which is such a lovely way to learn some things about who was in the room and then kick some conversations off before we went to lunch that first day. So that's what we talked about in that session.
And it was a very good lunch.
And it was a delicious lunch.
After lunch, we came back and went into all of the breakout sessions that we talked about in the agenda. Do you want to talk a little bit about why KCS is so important, Kelly, which we all already know?
We all already know. David Kay and Jennifer Crippen did a session around, this was really built around how you might have a conversation with an executive around why KCS is more important than ever. And the things they talked about were the things that KCS or a structured knowledge discipline gets us, especially in terms of feeding AI capabilities. So some of these questions are ways in terms of having conversations with executives to help them understand the investment in KCS and knowledge management discipline is as important as it has ever been. And then the following session in that same room on that same KCS type of track was Heather from Twilio.
Yeah, and what Twilio is doing is very structured approach to re-implementing KCS. They've been doing stuff with KCS for a while, but their leadership has really focused on that they need to be very intentional about what they're doing with KCS to do all the stuff that Jen and David talked about. And it really came down to three things: empowering our champions. So we need to have a very strong cross-functional team to drive and support the adoption of all of our KCS initiatives. That mentorship matters. So they have an interesting mentor model in place to help ensure that we're getting collaboration and we're sustaining behavioral change, all of the things that we talk about when thinking about coaching and mentoring and driving those things through the organization. And then celebrating progress. They've done a great job of recognizing all of the wins along the way to keep that excitement going, to have people understand their visibility to impact and how they're really transforming the way that Twilio will be delivering service in the future. So it dovetailed really well into what Jen and David talked about. And there's really some great things that Twilio is doing, and we're hoping to share more of that in a public format in the future. But it was truly a way to look at implementing KCS that will lead to very long-term success. And one of the things I liked about it was, they're creative, some of the naming of things, and it really highlighted that, KCS is a methodology. The practices tell you the experiences people are having, but you can change the names of things and update it to really fit your environment. And Twilio is doing a fantastic job with that.
On that same track was Mark Churchill from Rockwell. Rockwell Automation's been doing KCS they must be close to 20 years now. They've been doing it a long time, because when we saw him a couple years ago, he described the fact that they'd been doing it for 15 years and were just now getting ready to put a KDA program in place. And once they did that, that was in 2022, I think. It turns out the results that they were able to report out on got the KCS program lots of organizational interest. I think it is an argument. First of all, it's a great story. Members have access to all of the presentations. I dropped a link in the chat earlier of this call. So members can dive into all of these presentations, but Mark has a great story about how accidentally he's become important at work. Have you seen that meme? That's one of my favorites. Based on the results that he and his KDE team have been able to report out. So the way they have it structured is 3 dedicated resources who do this work. And being able to tell stories of success across the organization makes the organization interested in what you're doing. So that was wonderful. And he's been putting together KCS mugs for his team for years. They do a yearly executive summit, and I just loved some of their merch. In the other room,
everybody loves merch.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, in the other room, we kicked it off with understanding some of the successes that Autodesk and Ping Identity have seen with intelligent swarming. Both have been doing intelligent swarming for years, and Royce presented last year at the summit on kind of where they were in their refresh of intelligent swarming with amazing results. And now they have put in place an influencer model. So reputation model, as we have seen in other organizations, is a challenging word to use for a way to recognize people, but they built an influencer model, which really is one of the more advanced reputation-based models that I've seen, that takes into account all of the activities of intelligent swarming and the outcomes we want from intelligent swarming, but also making sure that all the other things that are important to a service organization are being taken care of. And then Chris from Ping talked about the early results that they saw when they implemented intelligent swarming and how those have continued. So it wasn't just this was exciting, so everybody was diving into it, but they have seen continued success. And this idea that we need to continually be iterating, continually being proven, just like KCS, intelligent swarming is a new way of doing work. It needs care and feeding like anything else that you put into place. And Ping has gone through some transformation, and they're excited to now be starting a journey of getting KCS and intelligent swarming rolled out across the acquisitions that have been taking place. So it was great to see real world examples of recognition models and the successes people are seeing with intelligent swarming.
And next up, we had Corey Myers, who's a longtime friend of the consortium, talk about how they are handling uh, the insane amount of automation that goes on at Cisco. Corey's title is the Senior Director of TAC Engineering of Innovation, Automation, and Disruption. When I talked to him in June or July, about 50% of the cases that Cisco handles are touched by some kind of automation. And currently they're up to 80% of the cases that Cisco handles are touched by some kind of automation. And the way they do that is by being really thoughtful about it. They've got some great guardrails in place. There's a structured framework that really provides people a way to understand what kinds of automation they should and shouldn't be playing with, and also allows them to monitor how that automation is working. So that was also their program is also one of the things that really influenced the AI blueprint in terms of how you approach that thoughtfully.
And then we ended that day with something that, similar to Corey, SAP fits perfectly into the AI blueprint and had a lot of influence on the AI blueprint. But Carly and Sherry talking about what happens when you start with a use case no one wants. Now, what's funny about their story is they started with a use case nobody wants, but turned into a great use case that has had a lot of impact on their organization. But what it led to was the development of what they call the AI factory, and moving from, oh, prompt engineers developed a use case and put it in our lap to, well, what are all the use cases? How are we going to intake and think through our use cases? How are we then going to design, build, and roll out these things? So a very thoughtful approach. So they started with a use case that nobody wanted, turned out to be a great use case, but it led to the development of this AI factory. And they talked through what it takes to get a use case through and the results they're seeing from some of these use cases. So a compelling discussion that fit very well into everything we're seeing around AI and being thoughtful about it to leverage it in the most impactful ways. And then it was Open Space Day.
Then it was Open Space Day. So Open space continues to be so exciting because it really allows the people who are in attendance to decide what it is that they are most passionate and interested in talking about. We had, what did you say, Matt? 32 topics. We had to
32
add
topics.
a bonus room so that we could have enough room for the number of things people wanted to talk about. The way it works is we build the agenda together at the beginning of the day, and then we break up for the rest of the day. We have 4 sessions, and folks who nominate a topic host that conversation that they nominated in one of these spaces during one of these time slots. And then we come back together at the end of the day and talk very briefly about what it was that we came up with in our conversations. And outcomes can vary from we just had a great conversation all the way through to we solved a major problem I was facing at work, all the way through to now we have a whole new work stream in terms of a topic that the consortium might consider or might pursue over the next couple of years. So the themes that came out of this Open Space Day, perhaps unsurprisingly, largely were around the future of work. That's what most sessions really focused on, including three sort of pieces of that. AI is everywhere. How might we deal with it? How we keep humans in the loop and what that sort of humaning aspect might be, how we might take care of our humans and how our humans might take care of the AI. And then the fact that content and knowledge are evolving. So the theme was the interaction. We didn't really narrow it down much further than that. And the topics that came out of that exactly fit into that 3-layer interaction model that we had been talking about. So it was great fun. So as an example, a of how this works. Roger Perry from Cisco and Adam Woodruff from Tyler Technologies hosted a session because they wanted to talk about the internal ROI and how we measure that of a knowledge discipline or KCS implementation. And when they came to the readout at the end of the day, their sentence to describe what they had discovered together was, the way they do this is demonstrating early value indicators to leadership, identified by a strategic framework and supported by actionable insights, like reduction of repeat cases, identifying new versus known issues, showcasing early high-value articles, and lowered time to user proficiency. So in their hour-long session, they came out with exactly what they wanted and needed from the topic that they had proposed, and summarized it beautifully. So notes are available in the member wiki, and we can't wait to keep doing this. It's just a really enriching day for everybody involved.
And the readouts are always a lot of fun with hearing people, one, try to take a 1 hour discussion or a 45-minute discussion and get it down to a sentence while also having some wine and beer.
That's right.
On the last day, we launched and talked a little bit about the AI blueprint, which is structured into prepare. So building the foundation, getting ready, making sure we have everything in place that we need to do automation based on these AI capabilities. Executing and launching with intent, thinking about what we're trying to accomplish, how are we going to experiment, and then obviously continuous improvement. It is structured like a lot of other consortium frameworks and methodologies and papers into different things. It also contains a lot of templates for thinking through your strategy. How do you capture use cases? How do you prioritize use cases? So there's a lot of templates to explore in there. And as this was just released, we expect to be iterating on it. So if you have interest in learning more about it or would like to have a call on it, feel free to reach out to us because we would like to get people to start playing with it so we can iterate on it and improve it. Then, since our success is through our people, we talked with 3 leaders from 3 different companies about kind of how do they think about strategy, long-term goals, and expectation management. And listening to their 3 different perspectives, having some question and answer was fantastic in terms of reminding everybody that we are trying to achieve some sort of long-term goal and not just chase the shiny object, which we had a sticker that said shiny objects with a cross through it. So we want to make sure we're not chasing those shiny objects, but keeping a long-term plan in view while continuing to be fast-paced and innovative and changing. And I think it was Joe from Techion who, what they say, Kelly, that they do 6 months of transformation and they pause for a quarter to let those things settle in and see how they're running before just continuing the chaos of change. So they have a very structured approach to pausing to make sure that they understand what's going on with all of the change taking place.
Yeah, I think you had been asking about sort of change management and how they do that. And it was the first time I'd heard someone talk about being super intentional about when we put a change in place, we do it, and then we stop putting changes in place for a second and let that run so people can kind of have a minute to catch their breath about it. I thought that was a really thoughtful way to do it.
Yeah.
Then our friend Ryan Matthews from NetApp talked about how they are thinking about calculating AI benefits. And so a couple years ago at one of the virtual member summits, he talked about what they were doing in terms of the way they were thinking about shifting left and how they were measuring sort of answers delivered to their customers. This is a really fun presentation that we are looking forward to iterating on in terms of how we might help people think about AI benefits and thinking about how what we're really looking at is that the pie is getting bigger. So we want to be able to share in the net larger sort of amount of benefits that we're seeing. And he helped really put those things into perspective in terms of how and when AI benefits are appropriate in terms of delivering customer value and answers to customers. So stay tuned. Watch this space for more on that as well.
Yeah, he definitely presented some things that he's thinking and things that NetApp's doing that I think would help us update the shift left model, update the demand model, and think about some of these things differently in this new world, which was really compelling and exciting to see. And then we ended with a little bit of a reflection and looking forward with Sarah on kind of how the work gets done at the consortium, the resources that are available, and this idea that all of this happens because of co-creation, like took place at the summit with all of these people. And it's their collective experiences that really allow all these methodologies, white papers to be created and then shared back out to the membership and shared back out to the world through Creative Commons licensing. And it has been in motion since 1992. It is member-driven iteration. So even when we think about the AI blueprint, it was based on the work over 18 to 24 months of different interactions with member companies, listening to what Cisco is doing, PTC is doing, SAP is doing, Red Hat's doing, collecting those things, working with teams there to think about how do we structure this into something that's usable by other people. And one of the things which Sarah said, which I thought was compelling, is you can really trust when you're reading these methodologies and things that have been put out to the world, you really can trust that they are sources of solid information because they're based on operational experiences of lots of companies. It's not just made up. And while we typically don't refer to things as best practices, because as soon as somebody thinks they have a best practice, somebody has come up with a way to do it better. What's documented today is based on operational experience and will continue to iterate, is always getting refreshed and is always up to date. And playing off of how we talk about KCS, that engaging with a consortium isn't something that you do in addition to your job. It's the best way to actually get your job done, which I thought was a fun play on KCS is the way we do our jobs. But it was a great reminder and reflection of all of the activities and all of the energy that hundreds and hundreds of people a year put into coming together as a community to make the world a bit better place for all of us to get our work done and our jobs done. So just some upcoming events and getting engaged with the consortium. In April, we have a innovation lab coming together, a 2-day event. So thinking about the continuation of interaction, the reality is in the interaction, and reimagining our customer and employee experience in this age of AI. So continuing the theme of Member Summit. Then we'll have a KCS in Action Lab on the intersection of KCS and AI, and a in-person meeting in Dublin, Ireland to look at knowledge domains, collaboration, and advancing AI. So SAP will be hosting us at their facility in Dublin for a 2-day meeting kind of exploring these topics. Come back and check the events calendar often. We are updating it with additions all the time. Right now, we're kind of out through June, but we're talking about a couple things that might happen in May. So make sure you're coming back and checking the events calendar fairly frequently. And get on your calendar now that next year's summit will be in Scottsdale, Arizona at the Hotel Valley Ho, which is a super unique property. It's very much a modern luxury 1950s, 60s themed hotel with some really great outdoor spaces. The weather should be absolutely beautiful in April in Arizona. And we're very much looking forward to having people back next year and meeting a whole bunch of new people next year. And then this is a fun word cloud that Sarah created based on feedback and what we heard from people either through the survey or on LinkedIn about the event. So it's obviously AI is pretty big in there, but people is just as big, and open space, presentations, attendees, making connections, innovating, having discussions, having conversations is really what the event was all about. And it was really nice to see so many new people. And thank you to everybody that attended for making it a special event, making it something that was exciting. The energy was electric, and it was because of all of you that it was a success, at least in my mind. It was a success based on all the great feedback and information that came from it. And that is it for a bit of a recap. So a 57-minute recap of what took place over 3 days. And all these resources are available in the members wiki. So feel free to check those out. And like I said, if you're interested in the AI blueprint, having a discussion about it, feel free to reach out to us at support@serviceinnovation.org, and we can look to deep dive into it a little bit. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. And thank you to everybody who was at the summit and made it a special event.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.